We'll start our next chapter on the age of exploration. And in the late 1400s and 1500s, Europeans decided to sail the world. There was a very limited knowledge of what exactly existed in the world in the 1400s and 1500s. If you were a European, you had known about Africa, you knew about Asia, you knew about India, you knew about China. Basically, you knew of all of the Eastern Hemisphere. However, you had no clue what was across the Atlantic Ocean in the 1400s. So, across the Atlantic Ocean from Europe is the Western Hemisphere. North America today, Central America, and South America. 1400, 1500, no one really knew what exactly was there. Didn't even know that it existed. Why are these Europeans are going to set the sails and hit the seas and go explore? Well, they justified it by saying in the name of Christianity. They're going to do it to spread their Christianity. But as we're going to see later on, that was a very weak justification for sailing the world. A couple of causes is what we're going to start with today. So Europeans are going to start. And one of the main reasons why the Europeans are going to hit the seas to explore the world is because of the Crusades. Now, when Europeans went over to the Holy Land and fought in the Crusades, they brought back all kinds of new goods. They brought back spices. They brought back all kinds of things that the Muslims had received from the Chinese: paper, printing, gunpowder, cannons, siege tactics, crossbows, all kinds of stuff. So there was a need and a desire to go back. And that desire was to not go by land, because by this time in the world, the Muslims had created a basic wall coming through the Holy Land and so on. So it would be really hard to get over to where the good stuff was in India and China by going over land. So they wanted to find a water route. Now, in Europe, there's a population growth. And if you are the leader of a country or the king of the country at any time, when there's a growth in your population, you have to answer a few questions. You need to answer, how are you going to feed all these people? How are you going to house all these people? How are you going to clothe all these people? How are you going to get these people jobs and put money in their pockets? Well, that's something that had to be answered. There was a demand for the things that they just got a taste of during the Crusades. Simple spices that we use every day, like cinnamon, nutmeg, pepper, even salt. Salt was used to preserve food, not exactly to flavor food, which was a huge, huge deal. And the greatest spices in the world come from India and the islands of Indonesia. And it was really hard to get there by land in the 1400s and in the 1500s. So Europeans wanted to find a waterway, somehow to get over there and find a direct link to where all the good stuff was. And that's the direct access to Asia that we're talking about, all right? Not having to rely on fighting the Muslims, not having to rely on fighting any other groups along the way to find a route that could get there very easily by water. Now, the Renaissance is going to be a cause of exploration because there was this absolute rebirth of learning, but there was also the questioning that went into this, the spirit of inquiry, wondering what else is out there, if there is anything else out there, and a desire for adventure once again. So all of these reasons are causes why Europeans were going to take the seas in the 14 and the 1500s. Another cause of Europeans taking to the seas during the age of exploration is because of new technologies. Now, some of these items are items that we know. Compass was invented in Europe during this time. North, south, east, and west would allow sailors to navigate very well and easily. Up to the top right-hand corner, there are these huge ships, which look like ships out of the Pirates of the Caribbean. They were called caravels. These were ships that were built by the Spanish, by the Portuguese, later on by everyone, which were bigger than the normal ships that were being made at this time, able to navigate the harsh seas of the world. The bottom right-hand corner are maps and sea charts, and if you look close at that, you can see that they didn't do a very bad job of showing Europe and showing Africa and showing Asia in a very, very early map that was published during this time period. And another invention was the astrolabe, or the astrolabe, which in that word you can see the word astro, which has to do something with the stars. So an astrolabe or an astrolabe was an instrument that you use the stars to be able to navigate. All these new technologies are going to cause the age of exploration. But all great events in our world have to have a spark. And that spark is going to come in the name of Prince Henry the Navigator. So Portugal is going to lead the way. Put a big star on Portugal. The Portuguese are the first country on earth to really, really take to the seas and explore the world. Now, a prince named Henry, who's known in history as Prince Henry the Navigator, saw a need to teach people how to use these things. And what Prince Henry did was along the same lines as the Medici brothers recruited people to come to their art schools and so on. He recruited people to come to navigator schools, to open these schools, to learn how to use a compass, to learn how to sail a caravel, to learn how to read maps and sea charts, to learn how to use an astrolabe. And the image there is an actual school, leftover navigation school from the 1500s that is still on the coast of Portugal to this day that you can go and visit. And if you were a kid growing up in the streets of Portugal and your prince came to you and said, look at this school that I want you to go to, and I want to teach you all this cool stuff, well, obviously, that would be pretty appealing to people, and it absolutely was. Now, the first trips that were taken by Europeans, by these Portuguese, were just off the coast of Portugal. The Portuguese would go and travel out into the Atlantic. They'd hit the Canary Islands. They'd move down into and also hit Northwest Africa. It was said, and there was a tale, that on one of these trips, actually Prince Henry in Northwest Africa brought back an African on one of the ships or two to come back to Portugal to work for him. So Prince Henry the Navigator is known for starting and being the spark of this age of exploration, this age of discovery. In some cases, it was called the search for spices to find that direct route. But he's also known in history for possibly picking up the first African and bringing it back to Europe in order to work for him, which inevitably is going to start the slave trade. Now, the goal that Prince Henry had, and all the majority of these early Europeans that went off to navigate, was to spread Christianity. All right, that was the justification. We're going to spread our great religion, but at the same time, we're going to take all your gold. We're going to take all your spices. Eventually, we're going to claim you to be part of our territory and so on. But Christianity and the spreading of Christianity was always a horrible justification that most of these Europeans used when they went into and explored new lands. So here we go. So in 1488, Bartholomew Diaz, a Portuguese man, is going to sail around the Cape of Good Hope. So he's going to leave Lisbon in Portugal, and you can see the route south. He's going to hug the coast of West Africa. He's going to get down there to the southern tip of North Africa, which is called the Cape of Good Hope. He's going to run out of supplies and basically turn around and take pretty much the same trip the same route that he went south on. Along the way, you can see that he stopped in a couple places. He brought back to Portugal tales of the animals that he saw in those places. Tales of giraffes, tales of zebras, tales of lions, tales of animals that no one had seen before, but possibly could have heard of before. He's going to bring back ivory. He's going to bring back some pretty cool stuff and so on there in 1488. So this guy named Bartholomew Diaz, a Portuguese sailor, is going to get the age of exploration started with his trip down to the southern tip of Africa, which we call the Cape of Good Hope, and then turn around and come right back to Portugal. Now, in 1497, his fellow Portuguese countryman, a guy named Vasco da Gama, which you might have heard of before, is going to sail in the same route from Lisbon. He's going to go and hug the west coast of Africa. He's going to get to the Cape of Good Hope. But he learned from Diaz's mistake and supplied his ships tremendously. He is going to sail around the Cape of Good Hope. He's now on the southeastern part of Africa. He's hugging the eastern coast of Africa in Mozambique and Mombasa. By the way, that territory on the east coast of Africa where it says Mombasa and Mozambique was Portuguese-held territory for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years after this time period. They actually resupplied their ships to make the trip, and you can see the arrow going across the Indian Ocean to Calicut, or Calcutta, which it is called today. Now, there was a tale that said on Da Gama's first trip, he got to India and he filled his ship up with spices. And it was said when he sailed back to Portugal and sold those spices to the folks in Portugal, it was said that he made something like 10,000% profit. So that means if you were to buy a bag of cinnamon in India for $1, you sold it for $10,000. the same bag when you got back to Portugal. Now, money obviously isn't what it was like today, but it was said that he made 10,000% profit on that first ship of spices. When that word got out, oh my God, the competition to get over there between countries is going to become immense. In fact, it's going to start wars eventually down the road in our lessons. Now, that's going to take us to a guy named Christopher Columbus, which many of you have heard before. Now, Christopher Columbus is known for a couple of things. We won't spend a lot of time on him because you pretty much know him very well at this point in your schooling. So he thought that he could reach China and India by sailing west from Europe, to sail across the Atlantic Ocean and go all the way around the world. And on the flip side of the world, he would get over into China and over to India by sailing west. Well, you know that there's a big problem with that. One problem was he underestimated the size of the world. He really didn't know how big the world was. So that's going to cause a problem. The biggest problem that he's going to have is that he had no clue that the Western Hemisphere was even there. They had no clue that North America was there. No clue that Mexico and Central America were there. They had never heard of the Aztec, the Inca, the Maya. They had no clue about South America and Brazil. No idea that that was there. So that's going to be a problem. So Columbus went to his king and queen because he was Italian. So he's going to go to the Italian king and queen, and they will not finance his voyage. So he's going to go to Spain. And the famous king and queen are Ferdinand and Isabella, who is most known in this time for the famous Reconquista. If you recall from first semester, we talked about the Spanish kicking out Muslims during the Crusades from their country and totally making it Catholic. Well, Columbus is going to go to Spain, and he's going to ask Ferdinand and Isabella to finance his voyage, and they're going to. They agree. They're going to finance his voyage to go across the Atlantic Ocean. So after getting the finances and after getting the ships, you know them, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria, and you guys usually don't know how long this actually took, but here's the numbers. So on August 3rd of 1492, he's going to set from Spain, in the name of Spain, in the country of Spain, and he's going to arrive in the Caribbean on August 12th, 1492. So just over 2 months it took back in those days to get across the Atlantic Ocean to get here. So he's going to arrive in a place called Hispaniola. On the map that you're looking at, it's called La Española today. It's the island that's inhabited by Haiti, the people of Haiti to the west, and the people of the Dominican Republic to the east. It's called Hispaniola back then. So when he gets there, he thought that he was off the coast of China. He thought that he was off the coast of India. He'd had no idea where he was. It's one of the biggest mistakes in the history of the world. So when he gets there, he sees people that are running around naked, parrots on their shoulders, drinking fruity drinks, having a big time. And those were the natives that were native to those islands, which they were called the Taínos. Now, Christopher Columbus had read Marco Polo's descriptions of China and India and how hygienic they were, how they were dressed. He was expecting some really, really polished people and some really impressive people when he landed, and he thought he was off the islands of India and China. Now, for this reason, he called the Taínos Indians, and that's where we get that term from because of Columbus's huge, huge mistake. Well, the effects of Columbus's finds, even though he was absolutely wrong, and will go to his death not really knowing if it was actually wrong or not. But one effect, and there's going to be tons of effects of this because it opens up an entire new world. So much that there became rivalries. So this is what happened. So once Columbus claims that territory or that area for Spain, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a fight in this area of the world between the Spanish and the Portuguese. So the Pope back in Rome is going to step in and say, you know what? We're not going to have this fight between my very Catholic Spain and my very Catholic Portugal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line on the map, and this is hilarious. Look at the line that Pope Alexander VI draws on that map. Now, the initial line said that Portugal, you may explore every bit of land to the east of my line that I draw, 38 west. And Spain, you may explore anything to the west. So if you're looking at that, you can see that the Portuguese got the bad end of this deal, which this deal later on, about a year later, is going to change, and a new line is going to be drawn, which doesn't help the Portuguese much at all. And that's going to be called the Treaty of Tordesillas. And in 1494, there's a second line that's drawn at the location that you see on the map, and the Portuguese could explore everything right, and the Spanish could explore everything to the left. So the Portuguese are going to get a bad deal when it comes to these lines of demarcation and so on when they're exploring the New World. So what does the Portuguese do? Well, the Portuguese go and they explore what they were allowed to explore. So in 1500, they're going to send the Portuguese explorer named Cabral, and he's going to go across the Atlantic Ocean, and he is going to explore and claim that area for Portugal, which he called Brazil. Now, 99% of people that live in Brazil today speak Portuguese to this day, and that's one of the lasting effects. Now, the Spanish are going to take off, and they're going to send their explorer Balboa across the Atlantic Ocean through the Gulf of Mexico. He's going to actually sail right under the coast of Florida. He's going to go through Panama, and if you know Panama, you know that there's a canal today. Well, you could go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean in a ship back in those days through that canal. Well, Balboa did, and you can see when he went from the Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico, through Panama into the Pacific Ocean, you're going to see that he's going to tool around, hug the coast of Panama and what is now Costa Rica. And he noticed, and he called this area or this new body of water the South Sea. Well, he also found out that the Pacific Ocean was much calmer, much passive than the Atlantic Ocean. So as he was tooling around, he actually named our Pacific Ocean for the passive waters, the waters that were not as rough as the Atlantic Ocean. So that's why to this day we call that area the Pacific Ocean. Now, in 1507, an Italian explorer named Amerigo Vespucci is going to basically sail a couple times. He's going to go across the Atlantic Ocean. You're going to look at Columbus's lines and so on, and then you're going to see what Vespucci did to the south. Well, he said, you know what, Columbus? I think you are way off. Now, Vespucci was Columbus's countryman. He was Italian. And Vespucci says, Columbus, you really messed up. This is not even close to being off the coast of India. This is an entire new world. In fact, Amerigo Vespucci takes it a step further and says, since this is a new world and you're way off, Columbus, I'm going to name it after myself. And he named it the Americas. And to this day, we call our North America, South America, Central America, Latin America. All the Americas are named after this Italian explorer, Amerigo Vespucci, that called out Columbus in 1507. Well, a Spanish explorer, Ferdinand Magellan, is going to have a huge claim to fame during the age of exploration. He and his crew are going to be the first to actually sail around the world. So Magellan is going to leave Spain, and he's going to sail across the Atlantic Ocean. Now, on the map, you can see the red line where he's going to hug the coast of South America. He's going to go around some of the roughest waters on Earth down there at the southern tip of South America, which we call Cape Horn. To this day, we call that area of water the Strait of Magellan, named after Ferdinand Magellan. He's going to go across the Pacific Ocean. He's going to go around the world, and he's going to hit the Philippines on the flip side, the island chain off of China and so on today. Well, you can see that the red arrow stops in the Philippines because when Magellan and his crew landed on the Philippines, the natives that lived on the Philippines didn't like the idea of these newcomers coming into their territory. So they rebelled, so they fought. And in fact, Ferdinand Magellan is going to die in this revolt in the Philippines. He's going to die. One of his head leaders, commanders of the ship, a guy named Elcano, C-A-N-O, is actually going to load everybody back up on the ship, and that's where you're going to pick up with the green line, where you're going to see that Magellan, one of his commanders, a guy named Elcano, is going to sail the ship south of India, through the Indian Ocean, around the Cape of Good Hope in Africa, and back to Spain. So Ferdinand Magellan never makes it around the world. However, his crew does. His crew does. So Magellan and his crew are the first to circumnavigate the world. Now, As the Spanish and the Portuguese are flying all over the New World, and their stories about gold and their stories about all these resources that the Spanish and the Portuguese are bringing back to Europe, the other countries around Europe are looking on and are very intrigued by this new world. So the English, the French, and the Dutch are going to get into the mix as well. And they're going to search for something called the Northwest Passage. So basically anything south of what is the present day United States of America was taken by the Spanish and the Portuguese. And they were not interested in anything really north because they had their hands full exploring everything else to the south. So that gave the United States and Canada, that was open ground. That was fair game for the English, the French, and the Dutch. And they're going to send explorers over to the New World and explore. And they're going to look for a Northwest Passage because basically what everybody was looking for was a direct route to Asia. The Spanish had it because they could go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific through the Panama Canal. All right. So the English and the French and the Dutch wanted a similar passage, and they called it a Northwest Passage. In fact, they found one. And the black lines represent areas that you can sail through to get from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean by going to the north. However, there's ice there, and this was a huge problem. Even though it is possible today to do that, in 1500s, you didn't have ships that could break through the ice like we do today. Therefore, it was impossible for them to go and find this Northwest Passage, even though it actually does exist this day. So what did the English do? Well, they're going to send their guy over, a guy named John Cabot. He's going to leave England. He's a famous English explorer. He's going to sail directly right across the Atlantic Ocean. And when he went right across the Atlantic Ocean from England, he's going to get into a new territory. He's going to get into some land. And he was so creative with the area that he found, he called it Newfoundland. And to this day, Newfoundland is found in present-day Canada. Now, the French are going to send their famous explorer, a guy named Jacques Cartier, on a couple trips over here. Now, he went through Newfoundland. He didn't want any parts of it because that was English-controlled territory, but he's going to go around it. And when he goes around Newfoundland, he gets into what we call the Gulf of St. Lawrence. And as you're following along, you're going to go through and see that he's going to name the St. Lawrence River for France. And then when you get to the bottom down there of the St. Lawrence River, you're going to see that the French are going to create a settlement. And they're going to call that settlement down there at the bottom of the St. Lawrence River, they're going to call it Quebec. And Quebec obviously exists today, and 99% of people that live in Quebec speak French. Now, the Dutch are going to get into the mix. They're actually going to hire an Englishman to sail to the New World, and it was an Englishman named Henry Hudson who's going to sail for the Dutch. Now, Henry Hudson is going to go north and south of where the French and the English were. He's going to go way north. He's going to go through the Labrador Sea, and he's going to go through a strait, which he's going to name after himself, which to this day we call it the Hudson Strait, and he's going to get into a huge body of water that we call a bay, and he's going to name it after himself. He's going to call it the Hudson Bay. Now, he's also going to sail to the south, and he's going to get into a place that we call New York City today. And he's going to go through that area, which used to be called New Amsterdam, which coincidentally was claimed by the Dutch. And he's going to claim a river there, which we call the Hudson River to this day, named after the English explorer Henry Hudson, who is going to claim that territory for the Dutch.